The twin flame journey is one of the most profound and transformative spiritual experiences a soul can encounter. It challenges conventional ideas of love, identity, and connection, often triggering deep emotional and energetic shifts. While much has been discussed about the feminine experience in this dynamic, the male perspective, especially the role of desire, is often misunderstood or overlooked. Male desire in the twin flame journey is not merely physical, it is a complex fusion of emotional longing, spiritual awakening, and inner conflict. As the masculine energy faces the intensity of divine union, it is called to move beyond ego-based attachments and into a deeper alignment with truth, vulnerability, and unconditional love. This journey invites the masculine to rediscover his essence, not as a pursuer of fleeting passion, but as a sacred counterpart on a path toward wholeness. The inner struggle, masculine resistance versus soul calling. For many men on the twin flame journey, the initial stages bring an intense internal battle that is difficult to articulate or even consciously recognize. On one side lies the masculine ego, shaped by societal expectations, personal wounds, and a lifelong conditioning that prioritizes logic, independence, and emotional control. On the other side is the soul calling, an unexplainable pull toward the twin flame that transcends logic and speaks to something ancient, sacred, and deeply true. This inner struggle often manifests as resistance. The masculine may feel overwhelmed by the emotional intensity of the connection, retreat into silence, or even physically distance himself. To the unaware observer, it can look like detachment, fear of commitment, or emotional immaturity. But at its core, this resistance stems from a deeper fear, the fear of losing control, being vulnerable, or confronting unresolved inner wounds. The soul calling, however, persists. It comes through in dreams, synchronicities, deep inner knowing, and moments of undeniable spiritual connection with the divine feminine. It is not something that can be logically explained or easily dismissed. The masculine may try to rationalize it away, pursue distractions, or suppress the emotions it brings, but the soul always finds a way to resurface, gently or forcefully, until it is acknowledged. This phase is crucial to the masculine's awakening. The resistance is not a flaw, but a part of the transformation. It reflects the internal breaking down of old paradigms and belief systems that no longer serve the masculine's higher path. As the soul calling grows louder, many men begin to surrender, not to the other person, but to the truth of who they really are. In this surrender, male desire begins to shift. It is no longer about possession, control, or escape. It becomes a yearning for alignment, authenticity, and unity, not just with the twin flame, but with the self. The resistance turns into revelation, and the soul calling becomes a compass towards spiritual union and inner peace. Masculine desire for freedom versus emotional intimacy. One of the most prominent inner conflicts for men on the twin flame journey is the tension between their deep-rooted desire for freedom and the equally powerful call toward emotional intimacy. These two desires often feel mutually exclusive in the early stages of awakening, creating confusion, avoidance, or even push-pull dynamics in the relationship. Culturally, masculine identity is frequently linked to autonomy, strength, and self-reliance. From a young age, many men are conditioned to value independence above all else, being taught, subtly or overtly, that emotional vulnerability is a weakness, and that needing someone, especially romantically or emotionally, is a loss of power. Within this context, the twin flame journey can feel threatening. The connection is intense, all-consuming, and emotionally raw. Everything the traditional masculine psyche is taught to resist. But the soul knows otherwise. The twin flame bond is not about dependency or loss of self. It is a mirror, exposing the places within where true freedom has never existed. Emotional intimacy in this connection is not about entrapment. It's about liberation from false identities and suppressed feelings. Yet for the masculine, embracing this level of openness can be terrifying. It demands emotional honesty, heart-centered presence, and a willingness to confront inner pain that has long been buried. As the journey progresses, the masculine begins to realize that what he thought was freedom, emotional detachment, control, avoidance, was actually a prison. The desire for freedom evolves. It's no longer about escaping responsibility or protecting the ego. It's about breaking free from fear, shame, and emotional numbness. Real freedom is found in authentic connection, and emotional intimacy becomes the gateway, not the barrier. In this space, male desire is transformed. It moves from seeking space to seeking depth, from wanting to be untouched to wanting to be truly seen. Emotional intimacy, once perceived as suffocating, becomes sacred. It is where the masculine begins to meet not only his twin flame, but also himself, the awakening of the divine masculine energy. In the sacred mirror of the twin flame connection, one of the most transformative and deeply misunderstood processes is the awakening of the divine masculine. This awakening is not a single event, but a spiritual unfolding, often marked by inner chaos, ego death, emotional disorientation, and eventually the emergence of a powerful, heart-centered presence. For the masculine, this is the journey from separation into union, from mind into heart, from survival mode into sacred embodiment, from ego identity to soul recognition. For much of his life, the unawakened masculine often identifies with the ego, his career, his reputation, his ability to provide, protect, and remain in control. He is often taught to measure success by how untouchable he is, how unaffected, emotionally reserved, or logically dominant he can be. Vulnerability, emotional depth, and surrender are seen as dangerous, even shameful. Then comes the twin flame. The twin flame connection pierces through that identity like a lightning bolt. It is immediate, overwhelming, and inexplicably familiar. There is a deep soul recognition, one that bypasses reason and logic and goes straight into the heart, the gut, and the energy body. The masculine is drawn to it and yet terrified by it. He feels exposed, seen, and spiritually called out, not in a condemning way, but in a way that calls him home. This divine mirror reflects everything he has been hiding from: his pain, his longing, his emotional wounds, his spiritual gifts, and most of all, his capacity for unconditional love. At first, this may provoke resistance. He may withdraw, avoid, or suppress the connection, choosing logic or distraction over emotional truth. But beneath that resistance, the awakening has already begun. The breakdown phase, chaos before clarity. The masculine awakening often starts with loss, crisis, or separation. This breakdown stage can feel like everything is falling apart: relationships, beliefs, self-worth, even his sense of reality. The universe, through the twin flame bond, strips away all that is false in order to reveal what is eternal. This stage is painful, but sacred. It is where the masculine begins to question everything he once clung to for safety. He starts facing the emotional layers he avoided: abandonment wounds, fears of inadequacy, suppressed grief, and even generational trauma. This is the crucible where the ego dies, not all at once, but piece by piece. In this collapse, he begins to hear the whisper of the soul. The rise, from wounded masculine to divine presence. As the masculine surrenders, something profound begins to emerge. No longer driven by external validation or fear-based survival, he starts aligning with inner truth. He begins to feel again, not just his own emotions, but the subtle energies of the connection, of the universe, of the divine. This is when the divine masculine begins to rise. This rising is not loud or boastful. It is rooted, quiet, and unshakable. The awakened masculine becomes deeply present, emotionally aware, spiritually connected, and aligned with higher purpose. He begins to see that strength is not in control, but in conscious leadership. That protection is not domination, but sacred guardianship. That desire is not about possession, but devotional union. He now understands that love is not something to earn or avoid. It is something to become. The divine masculine learns to balance the sacred polarity, holding space for the emotional flow of the feminine, while remaining centered in truth and purpose. He no longer sees intimacy as weakness, but as the most courageous act of spiritual strength. He embraces his own emotional vulnerability, owns his healing, and seeks not just to unite with his twin flame, but to rise in co-creation with her. A collective shift in masculine consciousness. As individual men awaken to their divine masculine essence, a collective shift begins to ripple outward. Old patriarchal models of power, control, and suppression begin to collapse. In their place rises a new masculine archetype, one that honors the heart, protects life, respects the feminine, and walks in alignment with divine truth. The twin flame journey, then, is not only a personal path, it is part of a much larger spiritual mission, the healing of the wounded masculine and the restoration of divine balance on earth. Sexual energy as a path to healing and union. In the twin flame journey, sexual energy is far more than physical attraction. It is a sacred force, a bridge between the soul and the body, between the spiritual and the sensual. For the masculine, whose desire has often been shaped by the external world, performance, conquest, gratification, the twin flame connection invites a complete transformation of what sexual energy truly means. At the start of the journey, sexual desire may appear intense, even obsessive. The physical pull toward the twin flame can feel magnetic, uncontrollable, and at times confusing. This isn't lust in the conventional sense. It's an energy that awakens every part of the being. It stirs the masculine's deepest desires, not only for union, but for something eternal, something unspoken, a remembering of divine love. This intensity is not accidental. It serves a purpose, to break through the emotional armor that the masculine may have spent years, even lifetimes building. Sexual energy in the twin flame connection becomes a spiritual activator, a mirror reflecting everything that stands in the way of true union. This includes past trauma, shame, fear of intimacy, and patterns of objectification or control. These blockages must be transmuted for the masculine to access the true power of his sacred sexual essence. The shift from physical desire to sacred union. As the masculine awakens, his relationship with sexual energy changes. It becomes less about release and more about communion, an energetic merging that transcends the physical act. He begins to understand that his desire is not simply for his twin flame's body, but for her soul essence. In this space, sexual intimacy is no longer about taking, but about giving, receiving, and becoming one, emotionally, spiritually, and energetically. The body becomes a temple, touch becomes prayer, eye contact becomes a form of soul language. In this heightened state of connection, both partners experience a union that heals deeply rooted wounds, not just in each other, but in the collective masculine and feminine. This is the alchemy of twin flame sexual energy. It heals what is broken, awakens what has been dormant, and fuses polarities into oneness. For the masculine, this healing often includes reclaiming his sexual power from distortion. Where once desire may have been shrouded in guilt, shame, or ego, it now becomes a force of light, a tool of conscious creation, devotion, and spiritual elevation. He learns that his sexual energy is a sacred gift, meant not just to express love, but to elevate it into divine union. Energetic exchange and soul merging. Sexual union between twin flames also facilitates deep energetic exchange. It opens channels for Kundalini energy to rise, for heart chakra expansion, and for spiritual downloads to occur. Often, intense sexual experiences in the twin flame dynamic trigger emotional purging or soul-level healing. This can be confusing at first, especially for the masculine who may not be used to feeling so deeply during or after intimacy. But with awareness, he begins to see that these experiences are sacred rites, opportunities to release, transform, and ascend. In surrendering to the sacredness of sexual energy, he steps into his full power as a divine masculine, not just a lover, but a healer, protector, and co-creator of light.